going to start on the neck, and we're going to go through what's involved building the neck from scratch. All necks, the headstock is slanted back. Now, in the old days, and on some guitars these days, the neck may have been carved out of a solid block of wood. So this angle was actually carved out of a piece of wood that was yay thick. We're not going to do that. Most classical guitars, this angle is made with a scarf joint. And let's talk about a scarf joint. Scarf joint is just this. We're going to take and we're going to cut an angle in the block, and we're going to take the part that we cut, take it off, turn it upside down. We're going to put it underneath the joint that we just cut, and the net result is going to be an angle. So that's our angle. And the angle we're going to use is going to be 15 degrees. Now, I've seen classical guitars where the headstock's been 10 degrees. I've seen it 18 degrees. So 15 degrees is a good round number. And here's how we're going to set it up. We're going to take our block of mahogany. Now, I've already run this through the planer, so I know a couple of things about this. Let me find my square. By running it through the planer, I know that the sides are square to the ends on both sides. So this is square all the way around. If you don't have a planer, you can do this with some sandpaper and a plane. But we had a 6-inch planer. It was easy to do. This gives us a basis for our measurements by making sure that everything is square. And remember, if you use a joiner, make sure you use the safety handle when you're pushing it through. That way your fingers don't slip off and get caught in. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark off a 15-degree angle on the main piece of wood. And I'm going to come back about 7.5 inches. So I'm going to put this down, and I'm going to measure out 7.5 inches from the end. And I'm going to just make a small mark. And on that small mark, I'm going to take and set my protractor on 15 degrees. And I'm going to take and put the beginning of that curve right on the small mark, and I'm going to draw my line. So I've just drawn my line for 15 degrees right on that mark. Then I'm going to take my square and I'm going to go right to the edge of that mark. Okay, like that. Draw a line straight. Great. And then I'm going to go on this side, and now I'm going to put my 15 degree this way and make my mark. And all this drawing is, there's a reason for it. Then I'm going to take my square, go over here, align it with the beginning mark, and just look over here, and it should be right at the beginning of that angle. So I'm going to make my mark there. Okay. So what I'm going to do is take my 10-inch saw. I've put the block and wood in the vise. I have most of it sticking up, but it's in there solid. And I'm going to line the saw with my 15-degree angle, but I'm also going to be looking at this line that I've drawn on the side. The idea is that I can keep this saw straight. So as I make my cut, I'm looking at two lines, not just one. I'm going to start my cut. Okay. And I'm looking at this line that's going straight down on this side here. That's going to keep this straight up and down. And we want to go slow. We don't need to go fast. Once I've sawn all the way through, what I've got is I've got a piece of marble that's perfectly flat, and I've taken some 100 grit sandpaper and glued it onto the marble. And I'm actually going to take and slowly but surely make sure it's flat. So I'm going to work this in by hand. And as I go along, I'm going to keep checking to make sure that that is square with the side, and that this area right here is also square. And this actually becomes a very important area. And it's got to be square, and it is square right now. Same with the headstock. We'll do the same thing with the headstock and wear this in. Check and see if it's square. Getting there. And I got a little bit more to go on that one. Okay, that's square. And now I'm going to take a look at the angle that this joint is going to form. And that looks good. And I'm just going to hold that angle in there. And I'm going to take the pattern that I'm going to use for my headstock and lay it up there to see if I'm going to have enough room. And yes, I am. So we're in good shape. Everything's going to work. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to glue these two pieces together. And in order to glue them together at the correct angle, we're going to make a little bit of a fixture. So right back. Oh, here it is. Don't go anywhere. Let me move my sandpaper. Okay. So what we have here is 2 blocks of wood on a scrap piece of plywood. And I'm going to take and put the main block here. And these blocks are already glued in place, and I've already squared them up. So anything clamped to these blocks are going to be perfectly square up and down. So I'm going to put one there and take my second piece and put it like, all I got to do is remember which way it goes. There it goes. No, that's not the way it goes. Ah. Trouble with making these fixtures is you got to remember which way they go. Okay, there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp this one to this side, and I'm going to use some cauls. And it's probably a good time to talk about cauls. A caul is nothing more than a block of wood that's got some felt on it. So I can put this against the piece I'm going to clamp, and the clamp is not going to mar the wood. We call that a caul, and we'll use a lot of them when you're building a guitar. Now the reason I've made this fixture okay, let's get this up there. Good. So I've just snugged that down. The reason I made this fixture is we've got to glue these pieces together and make a very nice joint. But at the same time, I can't just clamp the joint where I'm going to glue it, because it's on an angle, and if I did, because there's glue on it, it's just going to squeeze out and come out of place. So we need to hold the two ends. So that's what these two clamps are going to be for. And then we're going to put a clamp in the middle with 2 cauls. Got another caul here. So altogether we're going to use 4 cauls, and we're going to use 3 clamps. Okay. And now we're going to put the glue on. And the glue that we're going to use, let's see if we can get this in a better spot here. The glue that we're going to use is going to be Instrument Maker's glue from Luthier's Mercantile. Now you can use Titebond. There's nothing wrong with Titebond. Titebond is actually a very nice instrument glue for a beginner, because with Titebond it takes a while before it sets up. So you can actually put the glue on it, move parts around, make some final adjustments before it sets up. That way, if you make a mistake in the setup, you've got time to undo what you've already done. This dries up fairly quickly in about 10 minutes. It's pretty well set. And then last but not least, we can use animal hide glue. And the problem with animal hide glue is that animal hide glue sets up extremely fast. So if you're trying to, let's say, glue a top on or glue a back on, something that takes a lot of jockeying around and there's a lot of clamps involved, unless you're experienced at it, you may not have enough time gluing, using animal hide glue before it sets up. So for a beginner, Titebond, the yellow glue that you see at a woodworking store, is more than fine to use. I'm using this because I like it. It dries very hard. It gives the guitar a little bit more of a resonance than a softer drying glue. The downside of using this glue is if you got to take something apart, it takes a lot of heat and a lot of effort to get this stuff apart. Whereas at least Titebond, you can heat it up and it comes apart quicker. Animal hide glue is the easiest to take apart because it's extremely sensitive to heat. As soon as it warms up, it wants to come apart, and if it gets wet, it'll want to come apart. So those are the 2 advantages to animal hide glue. So what I'm going to do is I got to get one more piece to the puzzle. Okay. You can just let it run. Ah, here we are. And that piece is wax paper, because we're now going to glue. And since we've got a fixture that we're going to be gluing on, we do not want to glue our neck to the fixture. So the fix for that is wax paper. Anytime you've got a fixture, just take some wax paper, we're going to put it right down here where the neck would be. We're going to position our neck. Okay. So the joint that we're going to be gluing is entirely on the wax paper at this point. So we're going to use our caul. Snug that down so it can't go anyplace. The whole joint is right over the wax paper. And at this point we're going to put our glue on here. And we want a good glue joint. We want to get glue the entirety of the surface. Okay. And because we're going to have some squeeze out, if we didn't have the wax paper down there, we'd glue this right to the fixture. We're going to place it, squeeze it out. Okay. All right. Now, even before I clean up the dripping glue, we're going to take a caul and we're going to clamp this side. Good. Okay, that's snug, that's snug. So now when I squeeze here, these 2 pieces, because they're on an angle, can't shoot out at each other. We're going to make sure that it's square going down. Okay. take our caul on this side, take our caul on this side, and switch sides, bigger, and start to squeeze in. And there comes our glue. We're going to wipe it off. I'm just going to move this caul away from the glue joint so we don't glue our caul to the neck. Okay. And now I'm going to get one more clamp. Put it right on here. It didn't quite level out like I wanted to, so I'm going to loosen these. Loosen this. Push down. Tighten that a little. Good. That's level. I'm going to snug this back up again. And do this one. We'll put it on here. Okay. And checking to make sure it's level. Good. Good. A little squeeze out. Okay. Wipe off the squeeze out on this side. Gonna wipe out the squeeze out on this side. Okay, good. And that's it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to let this dry, and once it's dry in about 2 or 3 hours, we're going to come back, take it off, and start marking out the neck for the next operation, which is going to be laying out the headstock and laying out and gluing on the pieces for the Spanish heel. So we'll be back shortly.